Yesterday was a big day in the NFL offseason calendar. The end of the franchise tag window. 9 players around the NFL tagged, others let walk to see what happens in free agency. And some that we know are going to be released. That includes Russell Wilson. We got the news earlier this week. Mark Zinno is back with us for a second consecutive segment, live right here on the early line on this Wednesday. So the Russell Wilson era in Denver, Zinno, has come to a close. Donnie and Joe reacted to that news earlier this week here on the early line and the disaster it was in Denver, possibly one of the worst trades we've ever seen in the history of the National Football League. But now we focus on Russell Wilson and what is next for him. He might come at a discount to some teams around the National Football League. So where do you believe that most likely landing spot is for Russ?
I mean, it's hard to figure. There's so many narratives out there about Russell Wilson that, sort of just don't really – I don't know how accurate they are. They just don't fit. But whether he's not liked by other guys in the locker room, whether he's a quirky guy to get along with and everything else. But there's going to be a team here that's going to take a flyer on him at a pretty cheap price and is willing to do it. It's interesting. I started to hear some rumors that the Broncos are going to trade for Sam Howell from the Commanders, opening up a spot where Russell Wilson may be in a situation where he might be fighting for a job with a rookie quarterback in Washington, and that could end up coming to fruition. I still think the Raiders are a very live team for any quarterback that is out there, whether it's Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. I mean, guys, objectively, if you watched Denver last year, Russell Wilson proved he can still play. Through the first 10 weeks of the season, he was top 5 in completion percentage, top 5 in passing touchdowns, top 5 in quarterback rating. He did not play poorly last year by any stretch of the imagination. So this isn't about performance. This is about personality. It's about fit. It's about cost. It's about a lot of other things that don't necessarily, come to fruition on a football field. And that makes things hard to handicap from where he's going to end up. I mean, is it possible if the Giants move off Daniel Jones that they sign Russell Wilson and use their top draft pick in a position? I mean, does that feel like it could happen? Maybe. I mean, I don't know. It's really hard to figure out where he lands here, but I think somebody's going to come out of the woodwork and do something unexpected and bring Russell Wilson into the fold.
Yeah, moving on from Russell Wilson probably is the right move, but also, how much does he have left in the tank when an NFL team is willing to eat $80+ million in dead cap space over the next 2 seasons? But also, Mark, to your point, this is an interesting thing. It wasn't as if you gave up a 7th-round pick and assumed that entire contract on your franchise. You're going to get Russell Wilson for the price of, Brock Purdy right now. Not to say you're going to get the same type of production, but a guy of that ilk that can say, you know what, I can throw 30 touchdown passes, turn it over less than 10 times here, and you get that for $1 million. But also, let me ask you this question. Let's just say Russell Wilson doesn't find his exact team or a team doesn't want to bring him in. Hey, look, we're going with the younger quarterback situation. What are the chances that Russ sits out September and October with a Joe Flacco situation where, let's just say the San Francisco 49ers lose Brock Purdy to an injury? Russell Wilson coming off the bench and being a capable quarterback, and again, $3 to $4 million prorated could be huge. Is there a scenario in your mind where Russ doesn't even start week 1 in the NFL with a team?
Sure, but again, every year in training camp, quarterbacks go down. They just do. Knock on wood, I'm not wishing it on any particular franchise, but, by the time they get through the 3rd preseason game, my guess is Russell Wilson would have a home, whether it's just as a backup and insurance. Now, remember this too, guys, even if he gets past there, once you get through week 1, none of the players' salary is guaranteed. So week 2 is another signing period for free agents because none of the money will be guaranteed against a cap. There'll be no dead money as soon as you cut the guy. Whatever you owe him has already been paid and everything else is off the cap. So that is a situation where he might not get signed through training camp. Somebody might pick him up after week 1 from a pure backup scenario just to see what happens. So there's a lot of time yet and a lot of things are going to unfold. We'll have to wait and see how it all happens.
That's the interesting thing about Russell Wilson, in my estimation, the value that he brings with him. You're going to get him at a discount. You're not going to have to pay the huge money that Denver did. Is it worth it to think that he can compete for a starting quarterback position? Is he a reliable backup? Would Russ want to be in that position All of these questions to be answered this offseason around Russell Wilson. Again, yesterday, a big day in the National Football League offseason calendar, the end of the franchise tag window. 6 guys yesterday, Zeno, placed under the franchise tag. We saw 2 more under the tag earlier in this 2-week window. The Chiefs tagging L'Jarius Sneed, the Bengals tagging the wide receiver T. Higgins, and the Patriots placing the transition tag on Kyle Duggar. Of the names that I have listed and the 6 that I hope we can show you on this board in just a moment, which name, which player stands out to you the most?
I mean, look, there's always a desire for edge rushers, right? Like between Josh Allen and Brian Burns, somebody's going to come calling for guys who can get to the quarterback. I think that's always a premium position that you're going to look to try to fill no matter what happens. So from that standpoint, I think those 2 guys would be at the top of the list, depending. A guy like Matabuke feels like it's a fit position, right? Who's looking for that interior defensive lineman who can fill a gap? Who's looking for that guy that can, help the edge rusher that they already have, take away a double team just because they're so dominant inside. So I don't know if the market is as big. I think those D tackles obviously are highly paid and highly compensated, and he would be given the kind of player that he is. But I put those guys first. I mean, wide receivers in and of themselves, they always will find a home. It's just a question of who wants them and how much they're willing to pay for them when it's time for those guys to sign.
Let's take a look at some of those non-tagged players, which, quite frankly, we're always looking now at the running back position. Quality free agent class, maybe the best free agent class we've ever seen at the running back position, because it looks like you can get a deal on them. The Giants setting off into free agency, or Saquon Barkley saying, we can come back if we can agree to a deal. Jacobs now on the free agent market here. If we're taking a look at some of those running backs here, do we think there's going to be a market that develops? Or, Mark, we might be looking at midway through the summer, these superstar running backs still trying to find a home out here?
No, I think these guys all get signed before camp. I mean, when it comes to running backs like these guys, somebody's going to pony up the dough to a point where they're going to be comfortable signing, and they're going to structure a contract. And that's really what it's all about for running backs, right? It's about making them feel good and making them feel like they got a big deal. It's all about the structure for the team. You could sign Saquon Barkley to a 4-year, $64 million deal and let him feel like he's getting $16 million. But the structure all depends on how it goes. It's so much funny money in a lot of these running back contracts, which is the way it should be structured. If you play and you produce and you stay healthy, you'll stay on the roster. I had a good friend in the industry say, hey, send Saquon Barkley to Baltimore. I'm like, why? So he can add to the list of running backs who are injured in Baltimore every year when they play? I mean, that's just what it feels like. Saquon has played a good part of the games in his career for the Giants. You can't take that away from him. He's been more healthy than not, at least than expected. But all these running backs are going to need to be part of a team and in a camp at some point in time if they want to start the season somewhere. And at some point in time, these running backs are going to have to succumb to the idea that, look, this is what the market is. I better sign and play because there's no chance my value goes up as the season goes along. Because what happens, guys, as soon as they start snapping the ball and giving it to a 6th-round pick who can put up yards every week, guess what? I don't need that guy. I got a guy right here who can put up 100 yards a game. What am I going to go pay this guy for? So their value's not going to go up as time goes down the road. They got to sign and get in camp quickly.
And just for reference, Dalvin Cook last offseason into training camp signed a 1-year, $5.8 million deal, fully guaranteed with the New York Jets. You're not looking at huge money, but you're looking at however that contract is structured at the running back spot. Zeno, the name at the top of the list for players who were not tagged, Baker Mayfield. The Buccaneers placing the franchise tag on the safety, Antoine Winfield Jr. They will let Baker Mayfield go into free agency. I say go in air quotes because I ask you, is Baker Mayfield going to be the week 1 starting quarterback for Tampa Bay next season?
Yeah. I mean, I feel sorry for the poor suckers who actually sign him. I've seen this movie before. I know how this script ends. I saw this from Baker Mayfield when he was focused and young and hungry and wanted to win football games and wanted to be a football player when he was on the bench to start his career in Cleveland and then came in late and actually played like a serviceable or above serviceable quarterback in the NFL. After being kicked around for the last few years and realizing that his mouth and his ego were way too big, he got relegated to be a starter in Tampa Bay where he could only beat out Kyle Trask. Guess what? He played really well, played like an above-average starter in this league, and guess what? The minute you sign him to a deal and pay him, cocky Baker Mayfield is going to be back and the performance is going to dip and we're going to see how this thing plays out all over again. I just don't trust the fact that he's humble enough and smart enough to stay focused and go play football instead of worrying about running his mouth and the bravado and being the good soundbite and everything else. I don't know that he's got that yet. If he does, we haven't seen it, but I've seen this script before from Baker Mayfield where it becomes all about him and the play takes a nosedive.
Yeah, owners talk, general managers talk. So there's a reason why Baker Mayfield is like, okay, you'll go into free agency and we'll probably look to be bringing you back here because the market for Baker Mayfield outside of Tampa Bay may not be what it is. It almost feels to me a little bit like, and maybe it's not the same exact scenario, where you take a look at the Giants and what they were doing last year at the quarterback position with Daniel Jones, where laughing stock here on the early line when it was me and Kevin, we're saying like nobody's offering him $1 million a year, but let alone the Giants creating their own market for $40 million a year. It'd be interesting to see if there is any free agency connections to any other teams to sort of drive that price up. But again, just like Chris Jones of the Kansas City Chiefs, these teams are confident that they're going to bring that player back because it's a good scenario for the player and the football team as they appear. They just have to come up with a number that makes some sense here. Now, talking about coming up with numbers here at the FanDuel Sportsbook, new odds markets here, which mean, yeah, we want to see who the number 1 pick is, the number 2 and the number 3 pick will be here, Mark. But how about this? The number 4 overall pick, assuming the quarterbacks are gone. The leaders in the clubhouse right now, the odds-wise market here, it's Marvin Harrison Jr. at a minus 230 price. It's Neighbors at a plus 850 price. If I gave you a free pick here, number 4 overall, who's getting drafted there?
Jaden Daniels. Somebody will move up and grab him. I mean, why not? Like, it wouldn't shock me if 4 quarterbacks went in a row, would it? Like, I mean, honestly. Like, at some point in time, what you have to worry about, when the top 3 guys go, somebody's going to get nervous and jump in and go get him at number 4, right? Or you're assuming he's going to get 3.
Yeah.
I love 15
yeah, so
to
who's
1.
going 3 if Jaden?
Come on.
Well,
1, Caleb, 2, Drake May, 3, Jaden Daniels, just based on the odds right now, not overall assessment, just based on the odds. Or is there another quarterback, you think could go in front of Jaden Daniels?
Or somebody could trade up and go get Marvin ahead of him, right? I mean, it's one of those things where somebody always gets nervous at the draft, and what we've seen in recent years at least, and pulls the trigger. When it comes to guys that you want at the top of the draft, you don't wait. I mean, the philosophy of drafting is always true. If the guy is there when you want him, you move heaven and earth to go get him. And that's really what it boils down to. I think in general, when it comes down to it, there are a bunch of players or a bunch of GMs out there that are willing to risk everything to go get the guy that they want that really feels going to be a difference maker. So I wouldn't shock me if Harrison went in the top 3. Do the Patriots look like a franchise right now where they are, that they are immune from moving out of 3 and letting somebody else go up there and get somebody?
Yes, in my estimation, because Gerard Mayo in his introductory press conference said we're drafting the most important position in football, which would be the quarterback. But I don't disagree that there's going to be some movement, and these odds are going to move because of it as well. Mark Zinno, we appreciate the time. We round out this second hour next.